Chapter 57. In the evening, Eloise, at Niamh's behest, brought Leonardo to her parents' home at the QS Corporation. Prior to this, Leonardo had spent over an hour meticulously dressing up in his apartment, from styling his hair to selecting his clothes and accessories, all done with considerable thought. In contrast to Leonardo, Eloise appeared exceptionally calm as she was returning to her own home. She wore a simple casual outfit, a stark difference from the man's formal attire. It was the first time Eloise realized that when a man decides to groom himself, it can be even more complicated than for a woman. Especially when she saw Leonardo standing in front of the wardrobe, agonizing over whether to wear a shirt or a sweater, with a serious expression that made it seem as if he was making a decision worth millions. Eloise leaned against the door frame, watching the slight frown on the man's face. Initially, she found it amusing and was quite entertained. However, when she saw him standing there motionless for 20 minutes, she lost patience and couldn't help but make the decision for him. After all, it was just a dinner, not as formal as a business gathering. Eloise chose a sweater for him. Yet the man began to fuss again, murmuring that a sweater was not formal enough. What to do when a young boyfriend is being difficult? Simple, just give him a good scolding. In the end, Leonardo's fussiness and indecision were promptly silenced by a slap from Eloise. Eloise naturally didn't have the heart to hit his face. She only gave his tight, round but a hard smack, upon which Leonardo immediately fell silent, both embarrassed and indignant as he looked at Eloise, no longer daring to utter another word. After finally getting dressed, Leonardo pulled Eloise again, pointing to the pink mark on his neck, asking her to help cover it. Eloise initially refused, teasingly saying, "Don't you like this? Why cover it?" Upon hearing this, Leonardo's face flushed, his expression darkened slightly, appearing as if he was angry, but in reality, he was just shy. "It's not dignified." Hearing him say this so solemnly, Eloise couldn't help but raise an eyebrow, thinking to herself, when he pressed her against the glass wall last night to make love, why didn't he find it undignified? When he desperately called her honey by her ear, why didn't he find it undignified? However, Eloise didn't tease him further. In the end, she used concealer to cover the marks on his neck completely, and only then did the two finally leave the house after much dawdling. By the time they were halfway there, Leonardo suddenly remembered that he had forgotten to buy a gift. However, Eloise didn't give him the chance to continue fussing, driving directly to her parents' home. Perhaps because Niamh had given advance notice, as soon as Eloise drove through the gate, she saw the butler waiting at the door. The old butler, upon seeing Leonardo, also showed a kind expression, greeting him without reservation. "Young master, you must be tired from the journey." Upon hearing this, Leonardo's expression tightened and he instinctively looked at Eloise, only to see that she was naturally calm, seemingly not putting the title of young master to heart, or perhaps it could be said that she was not averse to it. With a light pursed lip, Leonardo said softly to the old butler, "You can call me Leonardo." The old butler's smile did not diminish, and following Leonardo's words, he addressed him again, "Sir." Hearing this, Leonardo relaxed a little, smiled at the old butler, and followed Eloise into her parents' home. That young master was naturally the intention of Eloise's mother. As a butler of the QS Corporation, the old butler certainly wouldn't dare to be so bold without the master's permission. Where would he get the nerve to casually address someone as young master without the owner's consent? Since adulthood, Eloise had been involved in numerous relationships, but most were just casual flings. She rarely brought anyone home, not even mentioning them, but now this Leonardo had become an exception, clearly indicating that she was serious about him. If that was the case, the days of calling him son-in-law probably wouldn't be far off. Upon entering the door, Leonardo was warmly welcomed by Niamh, who inquired about his well-being with a smile. She then led Leonardo to the dining room, completely neglecting her own daughter in the process. Thinking back to the past when she returned home, Niamh's attitude towards her was incredibly warm and considerate. Comparing it to the current situation, Eloise felt a bit lonely. However, there was certainly no resentment. Eloise followed behind the two, her gaze falling on Leonardo's slightly apprehensive and shy profile. The man's eyes sparkled, his joy barely concealed, and that joy, seen by Eloise, suddenly made her heart soften. Leonardo's past experiences always made him subconsciously isolate himself from those around him and the world. When she first met Leonardo, what amazed her was not just his looks, but also his cold and world-weary demeanor. It's worth mentioning that she was indeed attracted by this aspect of him at the time. But after really getting into it, she could no longer find that feeling, and all that was left was pity. Now, all she hopes is that Leonardo can be more connected to the world. From the moment he entered, Niamh's mouth never stopped. After a series of inquiries, Niamh, like other mothers, began to subtly ask Leonardo about his background. And Leonardo naturally dared not neglect, telling her everything truthfully. Excluding Leonardo's background, based on his qualifications, he could be considered an exceptional talent. Handsome and with excellent academic performance at school and exceptional ability at the company, Niamh's eyes sparkled with surprise when she learned that Leonardo had acquired a gaming company through stock trading, lavishing him with compliments, which made Leonardo somewhat overwhelmed. Later, when she learned that Leonardo had acquired shares in the QS Corporation, Niamh, being carefree, did not show the slightest displeasure, but instead showered him with more praise. Eloise couldn't help but wonder if, one day, someone took over their company, she would probably react the same way, happily praising them for a job well done. 10 minutes later, when Axel entered the family home, he saw such a harmonious scene. His wife was beaming at a young man, the warmth of her attitude something he rarely experienced. Axel's face turned colder, and he proceeded to remove his suit jacket, striding forward and asking coldly, "We have guests." The old butler followed closely behind Axel, taking the suit jacket, and then slowly spoke, "Sir, it's the lady's boyfriend that the madam has invited over." Upon hearing this, Axel's steps faltered, and his brows knit together tightly. At that moment, the three of them, sensing the movement, turned to look at Axel simultaneously, and the atmosphere instantly became awkward. Eloise's father, quickly, "Let's get acquainted." "This is Eloise's boyfriend," said Niamh, excitedly standing up from her chair, as if she really planned to have a getting-to-know-you session. Axel's cold expression did not fade, staring at Leonardo's handsome face, a sudden sense of anger rising within him. What was this kid up to? He had infiltrated the inner circle? Did he think that by charming the older and younger ones, he would be untouchable? "Hello, Eloise's father," Leonardo said, stepping forward to Axel, extending his hand with a smile, his demeanor much more humble than when they first met at the company. Axel glanced at the hand extended towards him but did not reciprocate the handshake as he had at the company. Instead, he scowled coldly, showing no intention of saving face for the young man. Come on, he had been polite to him because he was a shareholder of the company at the time. Did he really expect a friendly reception now? Dream on. Axel's attitude towards Leonardo was apparent to everyone, and Leonardo, even being treated so, did not show any annoyance, remaining quietly standing, with a soothing smile on his face, the light in his eyes dimming slightly. Seeing this, Niamh immediately felt heartache and quickly walked to Axel's side, ostensibly hugging him, but secretly pinching the flesh on the inside of his arm. Speaking with a hint of injustice, "Axel, what are you doing? Don't bring that authority you have with subordinates at work into the home. Leo is a guest I invited. With this attitude of yours, are you not giving me face?" Axel met his wife's indignant gaze, his expression stiffening, his annoyance deepening, but he dared not utter a word of complaint, and according to Niamh's expectation, he coldly shook Leonardo's hand. "You must be a very capable person. Let's stop with the formalities. We'll be one family soon. No need to be so restrained," Niamh said, her smile unchanged, as she led Axel towards the dining table. Axel couldn't help but inwardly grumble, whose family with him, but his steps followed his wife's to the main seat, showing no reluctance. The four of them finally took their seats, and the servants brought out the prepared dishes one by one, which indeed looked much more sumptuous than usual. "Eloise, I heard you took a day off from work today?" Axel suddenly asked in the middle of the meal. This simple question made Leonardo's movements pause, but he quickly returned to normal. Niamh, however, seemed to have been stepped on a nerve, blushed and raised her voice. "What are you doing?" "Eloise works herself to the bone for the company every day. Just a little rest today, and you're interrogating her? Are you planning to work your daughter to death?" Axel didn't know what nerve he had touched in his wife with the sentence, and he couldn't help but want to argue back, but faced with Niamh's fiery eyes, he eventually pursed his lips and swallowed his words. The meal appeared to be a harmonious scene, but beneath the surface calm was a surging undercurrent, with only the carefree Niamh still smiling happily, occasionally serving Leonardo food and inquiring about his living conditions, as if she had fully embraced Leonardo as her own son. Eloise hardly spoke throughout, and Axel even less so. In the dining room, where the drama was meant to be shared among four, it became the stage for Niamh and Leonardo. After the dinner, Axel proposed to discuss business matters with Leonardo, to which Niamh grumbled a couple of words, but did not stop Eloise's father from attending to official business. In fact, the so-called business was just a pretext, something that everyone except Niamh was well aware of. In the quiet study, the atmosphere turned extraordinarily solemn, with an undercurrent of tension permeating the air. Most of this was due to Axel's hostility towards Leonardo. Leonardo wouldn't dare harbor any dissatisfaction towards his father-in-law. Axel sat at the desk while Leonardo stood before him, their positions of power clear. "I've investigated you," Axel suddenly said after an unknown period of silence. Leonardo's gaze darkened, feeling an oppressive force bearing down on him at Axel's commanding voice. Having navigated the business world for so many years and overseen QS Corporation, what sort of demon or monster had Axel not encountered? Since their meeting at the company, he had sent someone to look into Leonardo's background, which turned out to be far more intriguing than he had imagined. He was aware that Leonardo was much more dangerous than he appeared. Anyone who had endured such a miserable childhood and still managed to rise to their current position was no ordinary person. It had to be said that given Leonardo's background and his ability to gain admission to a university and win a full scholarship through his own efforts, such a person was worthy of Axel's respect. Among the information obtained, he also discovered some actions taken by his own daughter. Even so, the fact that this young man had come this far was still a testament to his own abilities, and labeling him a genius was not excessive. Axel admired excellence, and Leonardo's resume was precisely the type he would appreciate. Having Leonardo as his son-in-law, aside from his young age, there seemed to be nothing he could find fault with. But the crux of the problem was, Leonardo was not a normal person. The information network of QS Corporation was not for show. If they could uncover the actions of their own family members, let alone Leonardo's condition. Leonardo's mother suffered from schizophrenia, and although his current condition was only depression, there was no guarantee that one day he would not develop schizophrenia as well. At that point, who could ensure his daughter would not be harmed? Moreover, schizophrenia is an extremely hereditary disease, with a greater likelihood of being inherited across generations, which also meant that if the two were to marry, there would be a high probability that future children of QS Corporation would have the same illness. The risk was too great. This was not something that could simply be withstood with the word love. "I know about your illness." With that statement, the temperature in the study dropped even further. The man's expression remained unchanged, yet his hands hanging by his side clenched into fists. "To be honest, I don't think you're worthy of my daughter," Axel said, his frosty gaze landing on Leonardo, scrutinizing him at the same time. This statement was cruel, but also reality. After an unknown period, the man standing in place finally spoke up. "Eloise, I understand your concerns." Leonardo looked up, meeting Axel's gaze unflinchingly, his voice firmer as he continued, "I used to feel unworthy of being with her. Eloise is an outstanding person, with a good family background. looks, and abilities, while I am just a worthless man suffering from depression. Leonardo knew that in front of Axel, all pretense was a fragile paper window, and all he could do was expose himself completely to him. I have also retreated and been lost due to the gap between us, Leonardo said, recalling the time long ago when he sat alone in the empty living room, waiting for her call. It was he who pushed her away, yet each time he behaved like a masochist, yearning for her closeness. He was timid and cowardly, greedily indulging in Eloise's approach, yet subconsciously fleeing. It was Eloise who gave me the courage and confidence to stand by her side. He was not good at expressing his true feelings, and this was a rare moment. Axel narrowed his eyes, taking in the determination in the man's gaze, then spoke a few seconds later. How can you guarantee that you won't hurt my daughter? To put it bluntly, your mother suffered from schizophrenia, easily angered, and your own childhood was painful. I don't want my daughter. Before he could finish, Leonardo's pupils contracted sharply, and he interrupted loudly, I won't. Axel's voice paused, watching Leonardo's expression, his eyes flickering with obscure light. I would never hurt her. She is the only light in my life. I would rather harm myself than touch her. The man's voice echoed in the study, tinged with excitement and anxiety, yet it truly landed in Axel's heart. Strangely feeling a bit sour, Axel thought that indeed a 23-year-old young man would say something as cheesy as, she is the only light in my life. A few seconds later, Axel sighed silently in his heart, his expression softening as he spoke. Being our QS Corporation's son-in-law can't just rely on a little talent. A gaming company and an 8% stake won't catch my eye. With that remark, the room fell silent for a moment. Leonardo stared blankly at Axel in front of him, his gaze heating up when he realized what was happening, each word he uttered sounding calm but carrying the weight of a man's commitment. I understand. Around 9 in the evening, Eloise and Leonardo stood at the doorstep of her parents' home. Niamh's smile had not faded all evening, and now seeing that Leonardo and Eloise were leaving, she couldn't help but hesitantly remind them for a long time. Eloise should have stayed at her parents' house, but since Niamh learned that the two were living together, she urged Eloise to return to her own apartment. When Eloise asked why, Niamh replied matter-of-factly, how could you bear to leave Leo alone in the apartment? Eloise knew that Leonardo was good at deception and manipulation. If he wanted to, he could charm anyone. But Eloise didn't expect that Leonardo had won over her own mother to such an extent, turning Niamh into his fan. She thought Axel would stop her mother, but to her surprise, her always cautious father remained silent, his expression stern as he stood aside. Before they left, he even patted her on the shoulder, telling her not to let down the young man's feelings. All right then, for the first time, she realized that her little boyfriend had the charm everyone superpower. In fact, as a man himself, Axel understood what Leonardo's words in the study meant. Some people cannot withstand tests, and their superficial sweet talk is just a thin veil. But he could see that Leonardo was not one of them. Perhaps for him, his own daughter truly was the only warmth he could find in life. Leonardo was devoted, and he began to worry about his daughter's unpredictable nature. Now thinking about it, poor Leonardo was already quite pitiful, and if he were to be abandoned by Eloise in the future, wouldn't he be even more so? Eloise had not expected that in just one day, Leonardo had won over both her parents' hearts, and even her initially disapproving father, who was concerned about his young age, had turned around to warn her not to mess around. Her gaze couldn't help but land on the man. His gentle smile, illuminated by the warm lamplight, was incredibly tender. Well, this little boyfriend of hers had won her own heart. Who else could he not charm? On the way home, Eloise sat in the driver's seat and asked, "What did my dad say to you?" In a place invisible to the woman, Leonardo's gaze flickered, and he looked down, appearing slightly dejected. "Uncle seems to think I'm a bit poor and said I need to make more money before I can marry you." Although she knew there was an 80% chance the man was lying, Eloise still pulled the car over to the side of the road, turning to look directly at him with an unwavering voice. "Don't listen to him." Money I can provide, but you must belong to me. The car echoed with the woman's unshakable voice, and Leonardo met her star-like eyes, his heart pounding loudly in his ears. Do you want to marry me? Eloise withdrew her gaze, looking at the deserted street, as if watching the traffic outside the window, yet also as if looking at something else. Leonardo, I have no interest in marriage. Hearing this, Leonardo's face darkened, and the joy in his heart was also plunged into an ice cellar due to the woman's words. Before Leonardo could say anything, a light voice came from his ear, but I'm interested in you. Leonardo, from the beginning, I said I was serious. The man stared at her profile, listening to her speak words that drove him crazy in the calmest tone. Yes, from the beginning, she had said she was serious. Seriously treating him, treating this relationship. But I don't want you to do something you dislike. I don't dislike it, Eloise said, turning her head to meet Leonardo's gaze. I don't dislike marrying you. You know, feelings are a wondrous thing. You might suddenly become interested in something that once seemed boring, Eloise continued, smiling, captivating in this night. Just like now, I'm filled with anticipation for the prospect of marrying you. Leonardo's lips parted, staring at the woman before him. Time seemed to freeze at this moment, everything in front of him gradually fading away, leaving only the woman's eyes, her smile increasingly clear, until they were engraved in his heart. Indeed, the wonder of love lies in turning dull life into something interesting, and he began to have hopes for a future without hope. Shall we register to get married tomorrow? Leonardo asked excitedly after an unknown period. In the next moment, the woman turned her gaze away, stepping on the gas pedal again, and the roar of the engine mingled with her light laughter. In your dream. Chapter 58. 1 month later, the National Gaming Tournament jointly organized by QS Corporation and Coldwind Game Company officially entered the final round. It turned out that Eloise's idea was correct. In the month that followed, the sales of the subsidiary's products experienced a qualitative improvement. As the competition began, a game craze swept the nation, with various gaming videos being uploaded and shared wildly on X and Y platforms. In a flash, the game's popularity soared exponentially. This was, of course, inseparable from the massive promotional campaign by QS Corporation. Instead of directly promoting their products, QS Corporation focused more on boosting the game's popularity, indirectly driving product sales. This approach proved to be more effective than direct promotion. The stockpiled goods in the warehouse started to flow out, with some being used at various competition venues as dedicated equipment, while the rest were sold both online and offline. Meanwhile, QS Corporation collaborated with Coldwind Game to host several game experience events, not only inviting renowned gaming broadcasters from various live streaming platforms, but also many celebrities to participate in the Celebrity and Broadcaster Collaboration Challenge matches. Naturally, Patrick, as a top star in the entertainment industry, was one of the invited guests. On the day Patrick participated in the competition, Y Platform broadcasted the event live, and posts were instantly elevated to trending status. In a short time, the game's downloads skyrocketed to the top of the charts, and the market value of Coldwind Game Company also continued to rise. In a short span, the game became a hit sensation online, and QS Corporation teamed up with major live streaming platforms to push live broadcasts of the game competition and popular broadcaster gameplay videos. Subtly, people began to associate the game with QS Corporation's products, and QS Corporation took the opportunity to release a series of co-branded and limited edition items, all of which sold out in a short time. Many top broadcasters also showcased their limited edition mice and keyboards on their social media accounts, sparking envy and jealousy among many who clamored for more stock on the official blog. Patrick also promptly displayed his full set of customized electronic products, causing even those who didn't play games to scramble for them. The influence of an A-list idol is formidable, but to a large extent, such a surge is only temporary. For electronic products, the main purchasers are still men who have a demand for them in their daily lives. QS Corporation's products are undoubtedly of top-notch performance. Previously, due to limited advertising and high prices, customers tended to choose slightly cheaper equipment in the same category. This time, as the project's main responsible person, Eloise reduced product prices while collaborating with the game company, adding a touch of nostalgia to the brand, and men would also purchase the products due to their passion for gaming. In a month, the products originally stocked in the warehouse were sold out, and new production lines were officially operational. Although the current profits were not enough to offset the company's losses over the years, it was proven that the decision Eloise proposed at the shareholders' meeting was correct. It was a gamble, and Eloise was the winner. At 2 p.m. on December 12th, the final round of the competition was broadcasted live nationwide. Meanwhile, the official brand blog of QS Corporation released the purchase channel for the Champion Series products of the first gaming tournament, which would be opened for pre-sale at the moment the game's winner was determined. At 1:40 p.m. on site, most of the audience had already entered, and the spacious competition venue was bustling with excitement. Many people even brought lightboards supporting their favorite teams, creating an atmosphere akin to a concert. Leonardo stood backstage, dressed in a very plain black casual outfit, with a black baseball cap that barely covered his eyes, revealing a finely sculpted jawline. This competition was crucial for both Coldwind Game Company and QS Corporation, so he felt he had to come and take a look. Everyone around was caught up in the tense and busy preparations, leaving the man alone in a corner, gazing at the already set-up competition venue. Anyone with a bit of discernment knew that this seemingly young yet aloof man was the owner of the game company. Despite his good looks, his temperament was truly cold, and getting close to him might result in getting frostbitten. Even those with a bit of a flirtatious nature wouldn't dare to approach and court disaster. They would only admire from afar. At that moment, a man in a suit and tie entered silently from the back door, standing behind the man, slightly bowing his head, and speaking with great respect. "Sir, the acquisition contract has been signed." The eyes hidden under the brim of the hat lit up slightly, then he responded indifferently with a before emotionlessly continuing, "Then inform everyone that we will not be open for business tonight." At this point, the man paused, as if thinking of something else, before coldly adding, "I don't want any disturbances." "Understood, sir," the suit-clad man replied and then withdrew, leaving Leonardo standing alone once again. With less than 5 minutes until the competition officially began, all the spectators had taken their seats, divided into 2 camps, shouting for their supported teams. The host stood in the center of the stage, passionately delivering the opening remarks, as the competition members also stepped onto the stage, pushing the atmosphere of the venue to a climax. In such a passionate scene, everyone was in a state of extreme excitement, except for Leonardo, whose expression remained unchanged, unmoved by joy or sorrow, as if standing outside the world's hustle and bustle, creating a sense of distance. "What are you pretending to be profound for?" A familiar voice suddenly sounded by his ear, somewhat irritating. Leonardo's gaze flickered, and he didn't turn his head, only sneering. "Aren't you busy with your celebrity schedule? What are you doing here? Can't get any work?" Patrick choked on his words, his originally haughty expression turning red with anger at the man's remark. "Leonardo, are you out of your mind? Which of those previous hot searches wasn't thanks to me? If it wasn't for me condescending to participate in your celebrity game, would this crappy game be popular to this extent? Do you have a conscience?" Patrick was furious, taking advantage of everyone's attention being on the competition to release some of his pent-up frustration. "I thought you were just green tea, but it seems you're also quite good at burning bridges after crossing the river. How can one be so shameless after taking all the benefits?" The boy spouted off a barrage of words, more fierce than a machine gun. Unimaginable that this childlike figure was actually a top superstar, perhaps just having escaped from kindergarten. Leonardo slightly turned his head, as if granting a glance to the side, not responding to his complaints, and merely raised an eyebrow, asking, "What's the matter?" Patrick was taken aback, instantly losing interest in complaining, his expression turning cold as he said, "Can't I just come to watch the competition?" In this contest, the outcome was clear. He had thought he had the qualification to compete, but now it seemed he didn't even have an entry ticket. "I'm here to warn you," Patrick said, his expression returning to calm, tinged with a sense of helplessness and heaviness. "Warn you to be good to Eloise in the future." Leonardo's eyes darkened, his thin lips barely moving as he retorted sarcastically, "There's no need for you to warn me." "You." His temper flared up again, but the words that had just reached his lips seemed to deflate like a punctured balloon, returning to his stomach. He was right. With his identity, he didn't have the right to warn him. Patrick didn't know why he came to find him, perhaps to make a clean break with the past, to give an end to a fruitless, unrequited love. He liked Eloise, truly liked her, even though Eloise had repeatedly said that this was his misconception, mistaking dependence for love just because of someone who treats you well. But he was clear that he genuinely liked Eloise. Perhaps it was love at first sight, or maybe it was a gradual affection, but by the time he realized it, he was already hooked. He had always thought he was special, at least to some extent. They were partners fighting together. She fought to prove her vision and invested resources in him, while he strived for fame, to achieve his dreams, and not to disappoint her expectations, working tirelessly. Now, he had become what he had hoped for, one of her many achievements. Over the years, as people around Eloise came and went, he felt uncomfortable, but never felt a sense of crisis, because he knew Eloise wouldn't fall for those types of people. And he knew even better that with her character, once she fell for someone, it would be forever. But unfortunately, that person wasn't him. He thought he had a chance. As time passed bit by bit, perhaps Eloise would look back at him, whether actively or resignedly. He felt that as long as that happened, it would be a victory. Leonardo's appearance was unforeseen, and he had thought he still had room to fight for, but when he sent the recording to Eloise, he knew the outcome was sealed. Like is attracted by one's merits. Love is accepting all of their flaws. Perhaps that recording was insignificant to Eloise, but it was precisely her indifference that allowed him to let go of his obsession of the past 2 years. Often, giving up isn't because of accumulating too much disappointment, but at a certain moment, you realize that no matter how much effort you put in, it's all in vain. This realization may come after a heart-wrenching episode, or perhaps just a trivial event. Seeing the future, one chooses to step back. Patrick knew that his words didn't hold any significance. But he was a star, a top star, and at least when exiting the stage, it should be with grace. "Don't be too proud too soon. I might take Eloise away from you at any time," Patrick said, taking out his sunglasses from his pocket and putting them on, patting the man's shoulder and turning to leave. A few seconds later, a confident male voice rang out from behind. "You can give it a try." Patrick's steps faltered slightly, but this time he wasn't irritated. He merely curled his lips into a smile and continued on his way. Sometimes, harsh words are just a cover for one's own bitterness, a bluff, and a final act of stubbornness. In the office of QS Corporation Group, Eloise sat in her office chair, while Luke stood in front of the desk, reporting on the profits of the subsidiary over the past month. Half an hour later, the report concluded. Luke held his tablet, looking tense and faintly excited as he read a sudden message. "Eloise, the finals of the game ended 5 minutes ago, and all the pre-sale slots for the commemorative products on the official blog have been snapped up." Eloise paused with her fountain pen. Then, after a few seconds, she smiled slightly. She wasn't as excited as one might expect, as if everything was as expected, remaining calm and composed. "But there's one more thing," Luke said hesitantly, then softly added. "Leonardo seems to be trending." Eloise furrowed her brow and immediately set down her pen, extending her hand to Luke. "Show me." Luke swiftly opened X on his tablet and clicked on the trending list. Eloise took the tablet and quickly scanned the trends, then without hesitation, clicked on the topic #DivineProfile#. Luke intended to warn her, but seeing Eloise accurately open the trend, he swallowed his words. Although Leonardo's face was indeed handsome, even mesmerizing for a man, how could Eloise be so sure the trend was about him? Luke couldn't help but think, Was Eloise overly confident in herself or in Leonardo? It wasn't hard to guess. Leonardo wasn't in the entertainment industry, and as an ordinary person, his sudden surge in popularity was due to two reasons. One, he was good-looking, and two, he was both good-looking and wealthy. Upon opening the trend, a GIF had the highest number of likes. The image showed the familiar face she knew, a man wearing a black baseball cap, his well-defined profile exposed to the camera, undeniably stunning. Obviously, this was captured inadvertently during a live stream, but an unidentified netizen took a screenshot and posted it online, resulting in widespread sharing. Eloise's expression grew colder as she opened the comments, which were filled with passionate responses, making her frown. Netizen A: absolutely stunning. His profile is killing me. So handsome. Netizen B: Mom, I've fallen for him. Netizen C: wow. Is this a newly debuted celebrity? Anyone know who this is? The office atmosphere grew colder, with Luke standing silently, watching Eloise's increasingly darkening expression and swallowing nervously. 5 minutes later, Leonardo's identity was indeed unearthed, though without photographs or his real name. Simply the title of Colwyn Game Company CEO had the online crowd buzzing with excitement, dubbing him "my love" without any restraint. Knowing it was just internet banter, and that those flirtatious comments were merely jokes, for some reason, she felt an inexplicable annoyance. It was as if her cherished treasure had been suddenly put on display for everyone to covet and scrutinize. Take down the trend. Delete the photos and GIFs. I don't want to see them online anymore, Eloise said, handing the tablet back, her tone icy, making one tremble. Does Eloise not want to go public? Luke tentatively asked. Eloise paused, then replied, no need. In her heart, dating was a private matter between two people. She didn't mind proclaiming her ownership to those around her or telling everyone about their relationship, but that didn't mean exposing her love life under everyone's scrutiny. She wasn't a celebrity, nor was Leonardo. They didn't need any hype to attract attention. Going public would only bring more harm than good. If it was about showing affection, that was unnecessary. Affection wasn't something to be displayed. Besides, she didn't like her boyfriend being fantasized about by so many women. His face was indeed too captivating. Thinking of this, Eloise couldn't help but smile lightly. Luke glanced at Eloise, realizing something, and with a sour feeling in his teeth, quietly left the office. 10 minutes later, the trend was removed, and all visuals of Leonardo on X were deleted, leaving only textual posts untouched. This left the netizens baffled, quickly realizing the importance of discreet, and they began to marvel at the power of money. Among the myriad of reactions, someone seemed to have noticed something, digging up photos of Eloise and Leonardo that had been taken unawares. They speculated the man in the photo and the GIF might be the same person. Yet this post was also deleted within minutes, with no ripple effect. Meanwhile, the man just learning about the trend was about to take action, but before he could, his images were already removed from the internet, leaving only text. The perpetrator was clear, and seeing this, a smile flashed in the man's eyes. Instead of making a phone call, he opened a message and typed, "Leonardo, the event was a success. Shall we celebrate together?" After a while, the woman replied, "How?" "Leonardo, let's have a drink." "Eloise, where?" "Leonardo, Soft Rock Bar." At 7:30 p.m., Eloise arrived at the Soft Rock Bar. With Christmas approaching, the streets were filled with festive atmosphere. Warm yellow lights made the bustling city seem gentler, with many stores decorated for Christmas and occasional Santa Claus-dressed staff distributing flyers on the streets. Christmas lights wrapped around the trees added to the holiday cheer. On the way, small snowflakes began to fall, provoking a wave of excitement among the crowd, who bore the joy on their faces. Eloise had no special feelings for snow, but at that moment, seeing it made her want to share it with Leonardo. The first snow came just in time. When she got off the car, the usually lively bar seemed a bit quiet, with only a waiter standing at the entrance. The neon sign was on, and 2 large Christmas trees stood at the door, decorated with gifts and lights, shining in various colors, radiating a subtle warmth, hard to imagine as the entrance of a bar. A doubt arose, but after a few seconds, she realized and couldn't help but smile, stepping into the bar. The bar wasn't closed, but she was the only customer, as if it was open just for her. Upon entering, the bar's atmospheric lighting was replaced with soft, warm tones. In the vast space, Eloise immediately saw the man standing at the bar. A French song played in the background, different from its usual style, making Eloise slightly lost in thought. In the quiet bar, brightly lit, only the man stood in that familiar position, dressed as he was when they first met, stirring her heart. The smile in her eyes deepened, and Eloise continued towards the bar. Everything seemed to revert back to half a year ago, to that not-so-hot early summer. The woman sat in the chair in front of the man, her fingers lightly tapping the bar. As in her memories, the man turned, but this time his eyes, instead of coldness and lifelessness, held warm light and a dazzling smile. "What can I get you?" "An angel's kiss, please." The angel's kiss, representing love at first sight. From the beginning, her feelings for him were a spark at first glance, a deeper affection at the second meeting, and genuine care at their encounters. In the quiet bar, the background music blended with the sounds of the man mixing a drink, reaching the woman's ears. Eloise watched him quietly as he placed a mixed angel's kiss in front of her. "How do I pay?" "No need." Eloise raised her eyebrows, meeting his intense gaze, as he spoke in the gentlest voice. "It's a gift from me." Love at first sight was never just one-sided. "I thought about leaving when the sunlight gave way to darkness. Never expected you'd fight to clear it away." The background music sang. The man suddenly smiled, a tenderness never seen before. His eyes held a light as brilliant as stars. Once abandoned by the world, it was Eloise who picked him up, leading him step by step out of the dark corner. From then on, his life had light. "Eloise, will you marry me?" Outside, snow continued to fall, gently covering everything, healing past wounds and scars. Everything was a fresh start. But no matter what, she would be his beginning and end. Yes! The music came to an end, and her answer, like a beautiful song, echoed softly. This early summer, someone arrived, stepping into the light. The end of the story. Thank you for listening.